With your reporting, the Justice Department says a ransomware attack which started nearly 2 months ago has successfully been contained. An attack caused some delays in child maintenance payments and other court services. The department says a number of online services are now reactivated in a safe and secure manner. The department spokesperson says security measures have been strengthened to protect sensitive personal information under its care.
The Department of Justice and Constitutional Development has made strides in recovering from the ransomware attack that occurred in September 2021. Over the past few weeks, the team of departmental officials, industry specialists, and advisory from organs of states have successfully contained the spread of the malware. A number of online services have been reactivated in a safe and secure manner. The team has also focused on ensuring that payment of child maintenance money to beneficiaries is disrupted as little as possible. Another critical area that has been given high priority is the electronic recording of court proceedings to ensure that courts are able to operate as normal. Most of the recordings are intact and able to sync back to their central repository. Where courts are still experiencing challenges, a special capacity has been deployed to attend to queries on case-by-case basis. The web portal that is used by transcribers to download court recordings for transcription purposes was successfully restored.
Now, Facebook whistleblower has told U.S. lawmakers that the social media giant fuels division, harms children, and urgently needs to be regulated. Former employee Frances Haugen testified on the Capitol Hill on Tuesday after she leaked reams of internal research to authorities and the Wall Street Journal. This prompted a denial from CEO Mark Zuckerberg, who is in a post saying Haugen's claims that Facebook prioritizes profit over safety are just not true. Haugen also noted the risk that the social media giant's platform are fueling a contagion of eating disorders, body shaming, and self-dissatisfaction that is particularly dangerous for young people. U.S. lawmakers for years now have threatened to regulate Facebook and other social media platforms to address criticism that the tech giant tramples on privacy, provide a megaphone for dangerous misinformation, and damage to young people's well-being.
Good afternoon, Chairman Blumenthal, Ranking Member Blackburn, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you.
Most important, I'd like to thank our witness, Frances Haugen, for being here, and the two counsel who are representing her today. And I want to give you my heartfelt gratitude for your courage and strength in coming forward as you have done, standing up to one of the most powerful, implacable corporate giants in the history of the world.
My name is Frances Haugen. I used to work at Facebook. I joined Facebook because I think Facebook has the potential to bring out the best in us. But I'm here today because I believe Facebook's products harm children, stoke division, and weaken our democracy. The company's leadership knows how to make Facebook and Instagram safer, but won't make the necessary changes because they have put their astronomical profits before people.
All right, staying with that story, I'm joined now by social media lawyer Sarah Hoffman. Sarah, good to have you with us tonight here on In Focus. Frances Haugen, are you surprised at all by that testimony that she gave to Senate? And she says Facebook products are harmful to children, stoke division, and they weaken democracy.
Thanks, it's so lovely to be here. So I think that, I don't know if you were following the Wall Street Journal expose. It was all a very carefully curated series of leaked information, ultimately culminating in her, firstly her CBS interview last Sunday, and then finally her testimony before Senate. So I was following this quite closely, so I wasn't totally surprised. And it's also not the first time that Facebook has been under scrutiny, under immense spotlight, for the ethical way or the unethical way in which they're curating the content that its consumers see. We saw it before with the U.S. elections. We saw it again with the Cambridge Analytica scandal. The difference now is that it's coming from the inside. It's coming from somebody who was so intimately involved. In fact, she was part of the civic responsibility team tasked to try and make Facebook a better place for its users. So I think that is the difference. And some people are calling this the big tobacco moment for Facebook, in the same way that tobacco ultimately came under scrutiny and was urged to act and, sell its products with greater responsibility. Some are comparing this moment to that. It will be super interesting to see what happens, what the U.S. Senate's response is.
As you rightfully say, I mean, Facebook has faced scrutiny before. Of course, this recent pressure, piling on pressure that was already there. If you look at the 2020 elections in the U.S. And some of the default changes that they had to make to their system. But why has Facebook evaded accountability for the company's failure to particularly address its detrimental effects?
Well, I think it really does come down to, as simply as Frances Haugen put it, is that they are prioritizing their astronomical profits over their people. And, it really turns on how their algorithm works. Their algorithm is an engagement-based algorithm, meaning that the more you pause on something, the more you comment on something, the more you share something, the more of that type of content is going to be curated in your feed. And what's happening is that the content that people are more likely to pause on or share or comment on is content that is divisive or political or shocking. And, in the case of teenage girls, certainly the research is showing that the algorithm actually can't differentiate between when somebody pauses on content because it's shocking or a little bit interesting, from a shock factor, or whether they actually want to see more of that. And that's where the algorithm can turn quite sinister. So a young girl might be liking, weight loss tips, and all of a sudden the feed is going to turn onto eating disorder promotion feeds, which is some of the types of sinister example Frances Haugen alluded to in her testimony.
How dangerous is that algorithm to our democracy, right? Because you would, as you say, pause on probably misinformation, and you will end up getting a whole lot of that, or maybe even political views that block you from hearing what other political parties are saying.
Absolutely. Well, I think, there is really such a fine line. And I think when this type of feed starts to orchestrate large-scale social engineering, then I think it can be quite sinister, and it is cause for concern. It's going to be really, really interesting. And to echo what you're saying, a lot of the criticism that has come out in this Senate hearing is that this is affecting the cornerstone of our democracy. The way that the information we are being fed is totally affecting. And in the same way that they altered the algorithm during the elections and then changed it back again, it really becomes difficult to know whether people are in fact making informed, unbiased opinions, and whether that really has a rightful place in a democracy.
Of course, the big question is Facebook profiting out of young users?
Absolutely. So, I mean, Facebook's youth segment is an extraordinary portion of their profit. I don't even think they can rightfully account for how big, because so many of the users are lying about their age to bypass the content restrictions ordinarily. But absolutely, between Instagram, WhatsApp, and not so much Facebook, but young people are a huge, huge portion of their audience. So many young people are making livings off Instagram as influencers. So I think that this is, again, why they would be really, really reluctant to put in measures which might not drive the same type of engagement that they are seeing right now. That is definitely going to affect their bottom line.
So let's take back to Haugen's testimony. I mean, she literally says in 2020, the company knew how to switch off that default setting to its system to make it safer. So if the company knows how to make Facebook safer, but they don't do it, what should society say to that?
So I think, as I said in the beginning of our conversation, it's, I think each time one of these exposés comes out, we're becoming a little bit more savvy with our views on the responsibility and the power that these big tech companies have. But where I think it's a little bit more different with teenage users and tween users, and this is the area that my company specializes in, is they don't really have that inbuilt impulse control. They don't have as strong an ability to be discerning or to pause and stop as much as adults do. And many adults have the same struggles as well. And I think that's where it becomes even more concerning in terms of their younger audience.
Now, we know that well, not only Facebook, generally digital tech platforms, they harvest your data, they watch the things that you say, the things that you like, and the things that you follow. They even follow places where you visit without your consent, which for me was a little bit scary when I discovered it. How do you protect yourself?
Well, I think there are a number of, especially with all the worldwide privacy regulations being front and center, POPI just recently coming into effect in South Africa, we are a lot more alive to that, and there certainly are, settings that you can make your personal information less available on most platforms. But at the end of the day, we've got to remember we are using Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp for free. And what the price we are giving them really is our personal information. So it's pretty much, a matter of if you don't like it, don't use it. And unfortunately, there really isn't a golden solution where nobody knows anything about you, because at the end of the day, as we've seen with Frances Haugen's testimony, they are taking our information to generate revenue for their very enormous companies.
Looking at those developments,
there's a limit to how you can protect yourself in terms of, for example, you don't necessarily always need to give your full birth date. You might be able to, on certain platforms, give only your year of birth, but each platform differs in terms of the information they require from you.
Looking at the developments and these expose and some of those details coming out, how is the future looking like? I mean, should Facebook users be worried about its future and maybe start cleaning out their photos out of the platform?
I don't. Look, we had a small taste of that on Monday night with the blackout, and I think everybody started feeling a little bit twitchy and realizing how heavily dependent we are on all of these platforms for connectivity, for business, for all sorts of things. I don't see Facebook being turned off overnight anytime soon. I think in the same way that big tobacco, when big tobacco had its moment and came under scrutiny, it took a number of years for lawmakers to put real regulations in place that changed how they did their business. I foresee that happening as well with Facebook. It will be really interesting to see what comes out of this Senate hearing. I mean, some of the suggestions being made, for example, are that Facebook is held more accountable, that their immunity in terms of the Communications Decency Act in the US, which basically gives them immunity for anything anyone else is posting on their platform, that law is done away with, and that they are held accountable for incidents that occur as a result of their content. For example, terrorism attacks. If they can be linked to content someone has posted on Facebook, some of the suggestions being made are that Facebook is actually held accountable. People are also suggesting that there are some kind of a lawmaker, policeman inside of Facebook keeping an eye on what's going on, or that they perhaps simplify the algorithm and not make it so heavily reliant on engagement. But it will be really, really interesting to watch the space and see what happens. But to answer your question, I don't think there's going to be a world Facebook blackout in the next week.
Sarah, appreciate your time. Thanks for coming through tonight. Social media lawyer
so
Sarah Hoffman there helping us in that conversation.